Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to day 4 of the Coalition of South Asian Film Festivals, CoSAFF. Today we have the fantastic Beyond Representation panel with South Asian actors presented by SAG-AFTRA Foundation and Actor Toronto and Actor Diversity. My name is Arshad Khan, and I'm the festival director of the Mosaic International South Asian Film Festival that takes place from the 25th to the 30th of November online. The Coalition of South Asian Film Festivals came together in response to the COVID-19 crisis, and it is comprised of amazing film festivals from Canada and the USA, including the Tasveer South Asian Film Festival, the Chicago South Asian Film Festival, the DC South Asian Film Festival, the Nepal American International Film Festival, the South Asian Film Festival of Montreal, and the Vancouver International South Asian Film Festival. For your audience questions, please make sure you go to slido.com and use the code 92245 and send us your questions, because this is going to be one exciting and wonderful panel. Our moderator this evening is a fantastic writer, comedian, actress, and her name is Kasir Mohammed. She is half Bengali and half Pakistani, but full awesome. And she was born in San Jose, California. She is a member of the distinguished All South Asian comedy troupe, the Get Browned, and an Upright Citizens Brigade Theater House team performer. She worked and wrote award-winning projects such as Smile and Namaste for Huffington Post, NBC, and Al Jazeera. She's the series lead in Paul Feig's dramedy East of La Brea, worked alongside Taraji P. Henson on the film What Men Want, Paramount. She's Issa Rae on Little, which is a Universal production, and her additional credits on shows such as Silicon Valley, the HBO show, Black Lightning, CW, and Carol's Second Act, the CBS show. She's also the Voices series lead for characters on Spielberg's Jurassic World, Camp Cretaceous, I believe, and the hit anime show Great Pretender. She is the co-founder of SHIFT, Racial Justice and Gender Justice Group by all women of color. And last but not least, she is the lead in our short film Coffee Shop Names, which is part of our VOD platform. Remember, almost all our films are available on VOD on demand. You just have to go to CoSAFF.org and register there, and you'll have access to all these films and all the excellent panels, all the workshops. And this is just day 4 of 15 days. So enjoy CoSAFF. And hello, Kausar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Arshad, thank you so much for that intro, and so happy to be here. Thank you. And again, just wanted to say hello to everyone today. It's such an amazing feeling to be in a community with everyone here. All of you all who are joining in. Again, my name is Kasir Mohammed, pronouns she, her, hers. And also did just want to say thank you again to CoSAFF, to Arshad for that introduction, to the co-presenting partners, SAG-AFTRA Foundation, Actor Toronto, and all the amazing, talented, and groundbreaking actors that you're gonna be listening to today. And because we're here to honor representation, that also means that at this moment, I wanna take a moment to reflect on the lands that which we reside on. So we should acknowledge that the ancestral homelands and traditional territories of Indigenous peoples who have been here since the time immemorial, and to recognize that we must also continue to build solidarity and kinship with the Native peoples who were here before us. So I am based in LA, in California, and so I would like to acknowledge and honor the Tongva people who originally resided on this land, and would also invite y'all to explore what land you're on and to continue to honor our Indigenous peoples in not only our actions, but in movements moving forward. And also, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that the US would not exist if it wasn't for the labor of free enslaved Black people. And even today, many Black people, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Dijon Kizzee, are being met with violence and being killed by white supremacy in the form of police brutality. And all that must end now because Black Lives Matter. So before we start, please join me in a moment of silence in honor of the Black and Indigenous brothers and sisters who have passed away and who have paved the way for us to come live in North America. Thank you. And that felt so important to do, a land acknowledgement and a labor acknowledgement. If we're here to talk about representation at this time, because we're in this larger backdrop of a world amongst all this context. And right now is such a pivotal moment, particularly for representation. And we're going to be exploring all of that today. And then 10 for today is to let it be this moment of celebration, looking back at the various achievements we've made as a South Asian community, as well as in conversation to get really candid about what representation means as South Asian actors. I mean, come on, y'all. We've gone from Apu in The Simpsons to Never Have I Ever being #1 on Netflix this year. That's so exciting. And at the same time, we're also here to talk about where we as a community have yet to go. So thank you all again for joining us today. You are a part of this and us showing up in community, and you being here is a part of all the success of representation. So if you have any questions for our panelists today, we can't wait to hear them. Send them in on slido.com using the event code 9224. So you want to send them in on slido.com using the event code 9224. So, and I also love seeing the chat box get popping. So throw in all the cheers, the snaps, all of that when you hear something you like, because that gives us a lot of life. And with that, it's time, I wish I had a drum roll, to introduce our actors. And I know we aren't there in person, so show us that chat box love. We don't see it immediately, but we can go back and see it. I wanna first give it up to Tiya Sircar. So Tiya is an Arlington, Texas native with a background in film, voiceover acting, and dance. After taking her first acting class at age 7, she realized her true calling and attended the University of Texas at Austin, receiving 2 bachelor's degrees, the first in business marketing and another in theater and dance. Following graduation, she moved to Los Angeles to pursue her professional career. While Sircar's acting history spans a vibrant list of roles, she recently starred in The Good Place for NBC, in which Entertainment Weekly dubbed her the series' scene stealer. Other acting appearances include playing the lead female in the Quibi show The Fugitive, starring as the lead in the Netflix film Good Sam, and guest starring in Netflix's Master of None and Fox's The Mindy Project, to just name a few. So we'd like to welcome Tiya on.
Hi,
hello.
thanks for having me.
So happy to be able to chat with you today.
Likewise, and thank you for starting this conversation the way you did. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad we're all here to be here together and do that. And now I'd like to bring on Hamza Haq. Hamza Haq was raised in Ottawa, Canada, born in Saudi Arabia to Pakistani parents, and has called Canada home for almost 20 years. Any Canada people in the audience? Hello. I'm not, but I'm show the love. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Film Studies with a minor in law from Carleton University. He's represented by art and continues his professional training as an actor with LS and Co Studios. He's currently starring as Bash Hamid in the new CTV NBC medical drama Transplant, which centers around an ER doctor who fled his native Syria to come to Canada, where he must overcome obstacles to resume a career in the high-stakes world of emergency medicine. We're gonna dive out into that. And in 2017, he was named one of Canada's rising stars in The Hollywood Reporter. His other notable acting credits include recurring roles on the Cinemax series Jet, starring Carla Gugino, Quantico, starring Priyanka Chopra, and The Art of More with Dennis Quaid and Kate Bosworth. Give it up for Hamza. Hey.
Hey, what's up? Thanks so much for having me. That was, I'd like to just echo what Tiya said. That was a beautiful way to start it with the shout out to the Indigenous folk and the show of love and respect for Black Lives Matter. And I'm very grateful that you took the time to say that, because we all need to echo that, especially as other people of color.
Amen. And I feel like a lot of the conversation today is gonna be able to let us to dive into those intersections. So thank you. I would now like to introduce Maitreyi Ramakrishnan. Hello, Maitreyi. Maitreyi soared to fame by landing the role of Devi in Netflix hit show Never Have I Ever after a worldwide open casting call by Mindy Kaling. Maitreyi beat out over 15,000 actors for the role. 15,000, y'all. The show premiered April 27th, 2020, receiving incredible reviews and climbing to the #1 spot on Netflix internationally. Ramakrishnan has garnered international attention for her performance as Devi, receiving accolades from industry leaders, media outlets. Outside of acting, she's an advocate for public education, the universal right to education, missing and murdered Indigenous women, gender equality, and authentic representation. Maitreyi identifies as a Tamil comedian and currently lives in Mississauga, Ontario. Come on down, Maitreyi.
Yo.
What's good?
Hi, thank you, Kasir. How's it going? I wanted to also just say, like, echo everybody else. Thank you for that lovely land acknowledgement. It's something that I think everybody should look into to figure out which land that they are on. And of course, acknowledging, you know, the reason why we are here today, the reason why we get to be who we are and take up the space that we are, thanks to the Black community. So thank you for all that. Much appreciated.
Yes. And thank you for your work for representation and support of Indigenous communities as well. All right. Now, our final panelist today is Sujith Varughese. Portuguese. Varughese. Sujith Varughese, come on over. He is currently recurring on both the hit TV series comedy Kim's Convenience, seen on CBC in Canada and Netflix worldwide, and the acclaimed TV series drama Transplant on CTV in Canada and NBC in the US. He has also made many stage appearances, including a Dora Award-nominated performance starring in Little Pretty and The Exceptional at Toronto's Factory Theatre. And he appeared in Indian Ink at CanStage National Arts Centre, Animal Farm, and the famed Soul Pepper Theatre in Toronto, and the Men in White at Factory Theatre. And Sujith is also a Writers Guild of Canada award-winning screenwriter and Gemini Award-nominated TV writer with more than 15 hours of produced on-screen work. He was actually the first minority to attend the prestigious Canadian Film Centre as a writer-director, and his short films and children's TV dramas have screened at festivals globally and have won several awards. His stage play, Entitlement, premiered at the Summerworks Theatre Festival in Toronto, and he co-wrote the acclaimed outdoor play with the music The Postman that premiered at the Panamanian Arts Festival as part of the 2015 Pan Am Games. Hello.
I thought you were done, and I turned the video on too soon. Sorry about that.
You know, sometimes that happens.
And I just wanted to say how moved I was that you did that land acknowledgement. You know, I'm old, and my generation didn't do that sort of thing, and it's really profound to see this generation taking that time to respect where we are from, or what we're on, and all of the things that you mentioned. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And speaking of where we're from, in order to hop right into it, I want to ask y'all, and feel free to kind of take it as what, I know all the mics, if you want to just hop in as to what feels good for you. So how did your South Asian identities affect your journey in acting? And how does it continue to affect your journey today?
No one's ever asked me that question before. That's why there needs to be more of these conversations.
There we go.
Man, that I do not have a prepared answer for that one. Damn,
No,
starting off strong.
Yeah, seriously.
If I'll jump in.
Yeah.
It really helped in a good way and a bad way. You know, it was a double-edged sword. Like, I started my acting career in Montreal, and that means that there weren't a lot of brown dudes in there. Therefore, every show at the time was looking for a brown baddie, you know, Arab, South Asian, Muslim, whatever. So if there were 3 shows, the 3 of us were working, you know, and therefore early on in my career, I did a lot of resume padding with that sort of thing. And then they're like, oh my God, you're working so much, but it was all like a lot of it was bullshit, right? Like, but when you're trying to break out and when you're trying to, you know what I mean? Like, you take what's available. Like, I wasn't going to be going for roles like Tyler and Brad and all that stuff. I'd be going for Insurgent number 2, you know what I mean? So like, so in a way, it was good because like I was working more than like any of my white friends who were trying to do it, because you know, they weren't looking for them. You know, there were other dudes with established careers and stuff like that they would rather hire over guys trying to break in, versus me, who like I didn't have anything and, you know, just picked that up. But then it became a thing of like trying to avoid typecasting, and then you hit a wall and you plateau, and you're just like, all right, cool, no more of that. And when you say no to that, you really get no work for a bit. So yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in Canada. I grew up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is almost to the degree of longitude halfway around the world from Kerala, where I was born. And I would go to the movies when I was little with my friends, because you could go to the movies then. And we'd see James Bond or whatever. And when I was 11, my parents took me to the University of Saskatchewan Film Society to see an Indian film, because they'd never been able to see them since they came to Canada. This is a long time ago. And I saw this black and white, non-Bollywood. It was like an art film and at 11, I saw my first brown person on screen. And it took my breath away, because I realized that for 11 years, I had been doing all this work to play James Bond or whatever with my friends, and they didn't have to do that work. And that's when I realized, oh, I do not want to live in a country where I'm invisible on my own TV screen. And I think that's what made me want to do this for my life.
Love that. And it's like, that makes me think of that one, it's like a Junot Diaz quote about how only monsters don't have reflections. So when we don't see ourselves reflected in the mirror of today, which is media, then we start thinking ourselves are monsters. So being able to see you on screen is everything.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, you go.
I had a very different experience than Hamza. I have not to date, I have not played an insurgent, but when I got here, I live in LA, and when I got to Hollywood, and it was a similar situation, Hamza, except that we were playing different roles. You know, when I started working, I suddenly found myself working a lot, like you mentioned, but I was only playing roles that were like ethnically ambiguous. You know, I'd play Amy or, you know, Stacy or whatever. And the character was sort of half a character, right? It was just like the fact that the actor playing that character happened to be South Asian, but there was no background, there was no like information that informed who she was beyond what was happening in that scene or that episode of television. And so my own life experience as a bicultural person, I didn't get to use it as, I mean, in a literal sense, I didn't get to use it as much because the roles I was that were available to me didn't ask for it, didn't require it. And thankfully, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this. I think we'll all agree that there's a long way to go. We have a lot of work to do still, but in the last decade, thankfully I've seen a tangible shift. And you know, now I was on a show called Alex Inc. on ABC a couple of years ago with Zach Braff, and I played a woman who she's based on a real life character, but who is Muslim and Persian. And I was like, guys, I can't read for this role. Like it's offensive to Persians. Like I can't do it. But they ended up sort of changing the role, which you hear happens to people, but it's never happened to me before. They changed her to being Indian American. And then they changed her to being Bengali American. I'm Bengali, because they wanted to incorporate that part of my, you know, my background and my culture. They gave me a mom character who spoke Bengali. My own mother was like our Bengali consultant, and I would call her and be like, okay, what would the word be if we wanted to like throw in this word? Anyway, it was such a drastic shift in like me playing Amy, who doesn't have parents or siblings or any real backstory that would explain why I'm playing Amy, to playing this character who was a Bengali American woman from Texas, like such a reflection of who I really am in real life. And it was a really like a special moment in my career that we've come at least so far, that I got to play someone so close that closely mirrors me in my own life. That was a really long answer to your question.
No, I love that. No, and that's so beautiful because it tells us the beauty of people in leadership on these productions who are willing and want to know the real story.
Totally. Yeah.
That I love that.
Me too. I loved it and I appreciated it. In fact, the writers, our showrunner and Zach, who was an executive producer on the show, they knew my parents were coming into town to visit me, and they were like, do you think that your parents would maybe come into the writer's room and like chat? You know, we could like pick their brains. And my parents are both college professors. So I was like, yeah, they'll be fine. So like they came in, we hung out for 2 hours. My dad, like within 5 minutes, had like a white, like a dry erase board, and was like drawing a map of India to I mean, it was wonderful. And such a, like, when had that ever happened in my career before? It hadn't. So I really appreciated the effort and care with which they wanted to get it right, get portraying Bengali American culture, Indian American culture on television correct. I appreciated that.
Absolutely. The power of when it's actually done right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think for me, well, I didn't do anything before Never Have I Ever. Like all I did was just like high school stuff. And I only actually really ever got into acting because I just wanted something to do after school. Like I just didn't want to go home. So I was like, hey, auditions for this musical, Footloose. Okay, I think that's a movie. Okay, sure, let's do it. So that's how I got into acting. But I remember when I was in grade 12, figuring out where I'm going to go for university. My lifelong dream was like, let's go and be a Disney animator. Let's go work at Pixar. That was the dream. Then I realized drawing for other people on other people's time makes me miserable. So I was like, maybe not. And my mom, she was the one who actually told me and said like, hey, like, just like apply to this theater program. Like, just do it. I'm like, what's the point of it? Like, what? Like, why? And she's like, just do it for fun. Like, add it in the mix. Why not? So before like Never Have I Ever even came into the conversation, I was like, okay, you know what? Sure. And then it came, I had all these acceptances and I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. So, the thing that as a 17-year-old, that's what you have to worry about. Figure out what you're going to do with the whole rest of your life at 17. Yay. But while I'm figuring this out, I remember I was like hanging out with my best friend. We've eaten like way too many cookies, blood sugar through the roof. And like my best friend's sister, we were just talking and she's like, oh, like, have you decided? Like, she's older and she's like, have you decided like where you want to go? I'm like, oh, I don't know. And she's like, why not do acting? And I'm like, how many brown girls do you see on TV? Like, how many? And she's like, well, think about it like this. There's no better time than the present to be a brown girl in the industry. So why not now? And I'm like,
100%.
Bro, that's so true. You know what? Brazy. All right, let's go. Let's go. And that's how we decided. I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't care if I'm never some like, on TV, on screen actress. I just want to act. Like, that's just what I like to do. I never got bored of it. It's what I was really passionate about. So I was like, I'm happy. I could be homeless and happy, but like, I'm happy. Like, I can't ask for much more than that. So that's how I got into it. And I'm really blessed to say that, like, Never Have I Ever is my first role, and I had that experience of a lot of privilege and just blessings behind my career thus far. But yeah, that's my spiel.
I love that you could just make that decision. When I was your age, I was the first pre-med drama double major at my university.
Art.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
and you all kind of have those backgrounds, right? Like Hamza, minor in law. Thea, you did a double major. Was sort of a plan B instead, or was there ever, was it just like, okay, we're doing this? Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
I love that we were all like, nope.
Yeah.
It seems that way, right? Because mine was absolutely not. I had no plans of using that business major. As I mentioned, my parents are both PhD professors and they're Indian parents. So it's like a double whammy of expectation. So when I was going to college, I mean, going to college was like non-negotiable. Like that was just, I would never have not gone to college, but all I wanted to do was hurry up and like get my, start trying to be a professional actor. And so I decided to get a theater and dance degree, but I thought, after I graduate college, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to move to LA and try my hardest to be a professional actor. And I don't know how that's going to go. So I don't know if there'll ever be another point in time where my parents are going to be able to be proud of me. So I should probably get another degree that like they can like hang up on the wall. And so I was like, what's something that makes sense to me that I can get into? And for some reason I chose marketing, which in retrospect was not a good choice. And I had no business getting that degree. To this day, I have like 2 sets of friends from college. Half of my friends are like artsy fartsy, creatives. And then the rest are all like investment bankers and hedge fund analysts. And I don't know what they do. Even when we went to the same, we took the same classes, don't know what they do. It's completely out of my realm of like understanding. So, but I did it and I got the degree and, it felt like a major accomplishment for me because it was so foreign to me. But yeah, it wasn't because I ever planned on using it, although people are often like, oh, you market yourself, but marketing is like a very specific
analytics.
Yeah, there's like a lot of numbers. I'm like an Indian person that is very bad at math. And I was like, which business degree? All right, you two. We're the only two. Yeah. I was like, which business degree incorporates the least math? And I was misinformed because marketing is a whole bunch of statistics. And anyway, no offense to any marketing people out there. I respect what you do. I was not good at it. But that is the only reason I got that degree. It was never because my parents put pressure on me to like do something else. It was thankfully it was just because I just wanted to like do it knowing that I would never do anything like that again.
Right, getting it out of the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Hamza, what was your experience?
Similar story. I started university doing neuroscience, and then like 2 weeks later it was like done deal, you know what I mean? Like my brother's 8 years older than I am. He was still studying biopharmaceuticals, and he has a great job as a environmental toxicologist right now, does great work. But like I was like, I'm not staying in school for 9 years. Like I'm not going to do that, especially within sciences. So I switched into accounting, did that for a year. And after the end of first year, I just talked to my dad. I'm like, yo, I kind of like, I don't want to do this. I'm thinking about dropping out. I want to become an actor. And he was like, okay. But it wasn't the conversation that I thought I was going to have with him. I was just like, listen, I want to be an actor. And he was just like, why don't you tell me earlier? I would have sent you to like UCLA or NYU or whatever. And I was just like, wait, hold up, and he was just like, yeah, like, listen, like my father grew up like quite poor, and like his family couldn't afford that everybody went to university. So his goal was to make sure all of his kids went to university and that he paid for it. That was his goal. So he was just like, listen, you getting a degree is like non-negotiable, but do you have a plan on how to become an actor? I was like, nope. And he's just like, okay, so why don't you like figure out a plan? You have 3 years to do that while you in the background earn a degree. And university was pretty much like, I joined the dance team for a couple of years, did like Bhangra and all these things, and then just got a degree in film, and all my electives were in law. And the academic advisor was like, if you take 2 more law courses, you get a minor. And I'm like, okay. And I got an email one day saying, congratulations, you have graduated. I didn't open it. I forwarded it to my dad. And I was just like, hey, Dad, gonna go to LA. He's just like, all right, you need money for a ticket? I'm like, yes, please. And he sent me. And that was that.
Wow.
It was
Okay,
just,
Dad.
he was just like, just get the degree. So I have fulfilled what my responsibility as a father is. Just do that. And then you have my full 110% support doing all this other thing. I think my mom's still like, he'll go to law school. You know what I mean? Like after all these years, she's still holding out. Because at the end, like every rap day is really just your son is unemployed day. You know what
Correct.
I mean? So I think she's got a little bit, but I mean, I kid, but like 40% I'm joking.
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
For what it's worth. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to ramble a bit more.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. For what it's worth, my parents would, via my mom, like when the first few years I lived in LA, and was doing like co-star roles and little films and whatever, my mom would call, certainly on behalf of my dad as well, and be like, like in your free time, you could just get an MBA
your realtor's
from
license.
USC.
Right.
I'm like, in my free time, get an MBA? Like, who does
No
that?
biggie.
And also, we don't have free time. All of our free time is trying to do what we do. I don't know. I don't think there is such a thing as free time unless you're on like hiatus. That's like a luxury, right? Anyway, so yeah, same thing. They have since stopped doing that whole like, UCLA and MBA from UCLA.
There.
So,
but y'all just dropped some important gems on everybody here in that, in the discussion with parents, if you're one of those people who wants to get out there and increase the representation, that one, having a plan to present to the parents, and maybe sometimes you just got to get that major done or that minor done to get it out of the system and say you did it. But you could still end up being where Hamza and Tiya and Maitreyi and Sujith are today. So thank you for that.
Well, and to tack on to the first question about how being brown like has added to my career. Well, obviously, like my career is a brown career, so there's that like holistic thing. But also, my first job I was a kids like TV show host, doing like it was a show like on TVO Kids, like the Canadians will know about this, and it was like I used to like dress up and sing and dance about geometry and spatial relations and stuff like that. And I got that job, one, because it was government funded. There's no way they were going to cast a white person. Like, I'm sorry, it's government funded, it's Canadian, it's about math. It was going to be me, or like an Asian. Like if I'm being real, I showed up to the audition, after we did an online submission, and I showed up to the audition. It was like 12 white dudes and me, and I was just like, yeah, okay. Like,
you're like, yeah.
I'm sorry, dude. Like this is like, I had government experience before, and I'm like, trust me, this is government funded. They're hiring a brown dude. But I got the job because of my first year doing accounting. They were so impressed. They were just like, ooh, he took linear algebra. Ooh. And I'm just like, yep, don't remember anything. Row echelon formation.
There you
That's
go.
it. Done.
And let's not forget, though, you started majoring in neuroscience. You're back at a show where it's all about being in a hospital. So
so the only I can pronounce the names of the things, and
there you go.
My mom can be just like, see, he made it. He's a doctor now.
And so, Sujith, I also wanted to. You have had an illustrious career, almost through different generations of being South Asian in the media. And I think I'm so curious to pick your brain in terms of what you've seen over the years in terms of tokenization of South Asians in the media and in TV and film. And have there been moments of you being tokenized and any tools that actors of color could use to protect their voices on set?
Well, when Tiya was talking about how when she gets cast, there's no Indianness to the character. I did a couple of years ago, I went through my resume and I tracked all the Canadian shows versus all the American shows. And if I've ever was in an American show, regardless of who the character was, no accent. I could have been playing somebody right off the plane, no accent. If I was in a Canadian show, it was always an accent. And I thought, here's a cultural difference staring me in the face. The tokenism. I mean, I started in this business in the early 80s. It was a fluke. I mean, there was nobody like me. I didn't have an agent. The way I broke into the business as an actor, I mean, I was literally going around to casting directors with my picture. You could not do that today and expect to get a call for an audition.
Or
but,
not get arrested.
I was the only brown guy, and they thought, hey, what the hell? And they would call me in for an audition. And the first time, it was a one-line part in a TV series. It was a cop show, and it was one line. I was the guy who ran the car rental agency, and I pretended to be Hispanic because of course, how could I be Indian? And I went, "Chugare man," that was the line, right? And I got the part. So, I mean, that was how I started in the business. I started in the business almost denying my Indianness because it wasn't an asset, right? It was, I had no way to hide it, but it wasn't something very sellable, you know, in terms of my career. So it was really about trying to maneuver my way in spite of sometimes, and because of sometimes, depending on if it was a Canadian or an American show, my Indianness. So I think the issue of tokenism is very difficult to answer because we've progressed so far from that now. Back then, who knows? Like, I'm sure I was the token something, and I was glad to be the token something because I got a job. You know, I was doing what I was doing. I wasn't, you know, doing my residency in heart surgery. I was being a car rental guy for money. So, yeah, I mean, it was such a different time when I started, and what Hamza and Maitreyi, I mean, what you guys are talking about is so far beyond what I was encountering when I began. If I'd known what it was going to be like, I don't think I could have done it.
Ain't that the realist? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then I look at you, I mean, Sujith, you have been acting longer than I have, so I'm sure things were drastically different from when I started than what you're talking about. But now you're on this show as an Indian, I mean, a South Asian girl, like exactly like who you are. I think that like we've come so far. It's like the #1 show on Netflix. Yeah. And there's no hiding your background. Your family's on the show. Like it like I feel like an old person saying this. It warms my heart watching your show and being like that. Like everybody in America is watching this freaking show, and this girl. There is no like ambiguity about who you are and where your family's from, and you know. I think that like we're having this conversation and we're talking about when we started, not to make any of the rest of us feel old, but here you are, like your first job, and you don't have to deal with any of that. And I just am overjoyed for you, and also for our industry, and for people that get to watch the show, that like get to watch that character have that journey. I mean, that was like my journey, and maybe some of your journeys. And anyway, I might have just gone off on a little tangent, but I'm thrilled that is your experience starting out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That warms my heart. I actually say the phrase warms my heart a lot, like in normal speech. And I'm questioning that now. Questioning that if,
is that an old people thing now?
Maybe it's not.
No, I love that. And no, but I love that you said that, Tiya, because it's also like, shout out to the elders who paved the path, and, you know, the standing on the shoulders of giants, the people before us, and who, I don't know, Mr. Ben Kingsley, who was playing like half Indian dude, but, you know, was getting the roles. And I mean, it's all these steps to where we are today. And one thing I want to ask y'all is, yes, we've made moves. Yes, we are doing amazing things. What's like, if we're digging deeper, what's the next thing out there? And maybe this could come from a reflection of your own personal experiences, but also something that I've been personally reflecting on is highlighting marginalized communities within our own cultures, you know, whether it's our Dalit or our Kashmiri or our refugee people, or whether also, you know, our own diaspora, and speaking more by diaspora, so people just don't think we're Asian American, you know, which is this erasure. So want to give that back to y'all to what's the level underneath, because we still are underrepresented.
I think, like, if I can jump in here, I'd say, like you said, like there's even just saying, every time I say South Asian, like in an interview or whatever, Like, by the way, I'm holding my AirPod because if you guys haven't noticed, my AirPods have dropped like 7 times in this call, but we're gonna pretend like that didn't happen. Anyways, moving on. Yeah, every time I'm in an interview and I say South Asian community, I'm like, yeah, that's probably the biggest umbrella term, but like, go off, I guess, you know, like, it sucks that we have to say that sometimes to explain ourselves, because reality is awareness of the South Asian community, this mythical creature, isn't up to par. Like, you don't know about Tamil people. Like, as a Tamil person, I will never forget growing up and people saying like, what the hell is that? You're a camel? And I'm like, nah, bro, you're racist though. Like, that's what it is, right? Like, people don't know what that is, and it sucks. It shows us how far we've got to go in terms of educating people. But personally, for what's next, in my opinion, and I just sort of reflect on my own career, because there's so much, and there's no one possible answer for what's next to accomplish all. But in my scope of what I can do as me, Maitreyi Ramakrishnan, I want to take on more characters that, sure, maybe have a background where they are Hindu or they are written as Tamil. Like, you know, you were saying, Tia, like, they are written to be that culture, that background, whatever it is, but also take on characters where it doesn't matter, but not no, you know, surface level character, a character that actually has depth and dimension, but just so happens to become Tamil because I play them. And on top of that, 100%. Have characters that, you know, are totally different to Davy. Like, I want a character that would meet Davy and want to box her in the face and like punch her, because they would not get along. Because not all South Asian girls in Gen Z who are second generation in Canada, America, the Western world are Davy. I wasn't Davy entirely to a T when I was in high school. A lot of my South Asian friends, there's that term again, a lot of my South Asian friends, they're not Davy. Some are, for sure. And I know, based off of fan responses, so many people vibed with Davy and could relate. But there's a whole pocket of people that can't. And I don't blame them. How could you possibly? That's unrealistic. So I think it's a matter of taking up a bunch of different roles, a bunch of different personalities and whatnot, if that makes sense.
Taking it over. Mm-hmm. And normalizing these narratives.
Yes, 100%.
I think I feel like maybe you guys will feel me on this. One thing, as far as like where this can keeping this momentum and where it can move to, I auditioned for a lot of roles that I am a naturally optimistic, positive person. So I don't mean this to sound sort of like ho-hum and like pessimistic, but I will, you know, get a producer, like a meeting with a producer about a role that's the lead role. Great. And, you know, she has a dad and a brother that are on the show, and, you know, she's a lawyer, and she does blah. And immediately, I mean, I've been doing this not forever and ever, but enough for long enough that I know, like my manager will call me and be like, okay, here's the thing. And I'm like, wait, there's a dad and a brother. It's not going to happen. And this is not like written for a South Asian character. Yeah. It's again, like Jennifer, and I've played probably 5 Jennifers in my life, but it's Jennifer who's like the adorable like lawyer, but you know, and her dad is like the curmudgeonly old dad, and then there's the brother character, and I'm like, I know that when you start introducing like extended family members, if it's not explicitly, luckily nowadays there are those shows that do have, you know, South Asian families on them, but not nearly enough. And when it's not explicitly a South Asian character, I find that like, oh, there's like extended family. It's the kiss of death for me to get that role. And so and I don't know, have you all had that experience?
Oh yeah, I'm actually glad you said that, because like, I still feel like so green to the industry. So that when I thought about that, like whenever I get approached with a script that has a family dynamic, has a bunch of siblings or whatever, in my head, I'm like, are they really going to find that many brown people? Like, are they really going to find that many brown people just to cast me?
100%.
Like,
and
so I'm glad. I'm glad it's not just in my head. So thank you.
No,
That's a real thing.
I fight with my manager because, bless her heart, you know, she is like, why can't this be you? You know, why couldn't you be the blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I am in full agreement. I think it should be me too. I just don't think they're going to go out and cast, you know, an Indian, you know, a South Asian, an Indian mom and an Indian dad and an Indian brother and then a brother's wife. Like, it's just, you know, and so I think as many like milestones as I can count in my own career, and also just like looking at y'all's careers and people, you know, friends' careers on television, and seeing the types of roles that are being played by South Asian actors, and seeing how far we've come from Apu from The Simpsons, I just think like that is another hurdle that I think is yet to, you know, sort of be tackled. And I think I'm so ready to not have to be like, to go, no, that's not going to be possible, because they're just not going to give me a brother. It's not going to happen. So I would love to see that be, you know, the next thing where I don't have to, that isn't going to be like limit me from getting a job that I might otherwise be perfect for.
Right. So the next solution, we need more brown actors in the space.
100%.
Putting it
I
out.
don't think it's a shortage of actors. I think it's a shortage of willingness to cast us in roles.
And
Thank
do that
you.
search. Yeah, take that effort
Take
to do that search for brown actors.
Yeah.
And another thought for y'all, and this is more for reflecting it back on the community, right? So we are at a point in our representation where there are stories being told of us more than they were before, right? In that sense, I feel like this term representation anxiety expresses to me this feeling of, you know, we only have one shot. We only have one shot of having this brown show up or this brown movie up, you know? And because it's only one shot, everybody from the community has such specific expectations. And thus it can, you know, cause a lot of conflicting responses to the receiving end of folks watching the one brown show that came out that year. In y'all's opinions, what are your thoughts to what it means as a community to support or critique the South Asian centered TV and film that's out there?
I think it's just, there just has to be diversity within representation. You know what I mean? Like it's usually one or the other. Okay, we'll cast one of each and that's diversity. You know what I mean? No, like I get a lot of Muslim characters, you know what I mean? And I perhaps, like, you know, the biggest moment of my career thus far is already an outdated thing in terms of the fact that, like, I'm playing an Arab, you know what I mean? Like on the show, like I'm playing a Syrian, and I'm just like, well, where do I draw that line? I know what it is to be an immigrant, and I know what it is to be a Muslim. So not a crazy stretch for me to play a Muslim refugee, but a Syrian, okay, I understand that. I did whatever I could to get as close to that as possible, but I understand it's outdated. I fully respect that. I respect the shows, you know, they looked for Syrian actors. It was a 2-month thing, and Canada's way behind on this. So therefore, I'm grateful for the part, doing my best and everything like that. But the fact that, like, this was a show, everyone's just like, this is the first time I saw like a Muslim character on this thing, and therefore this is how every Muslim should be, and this is how whatever. And the second you do one thing, like, you know, like you say something like, well, I skipped out on a prayer, then there's 40,000 people just being just like, see, this is what the industry does. It paints us as undevoted and you know, like, and I'm just like, yo, like, I'm like, yo, like Muslims, like, I'm sorry, like I don't know many who catch all 5 in the day. You know what I mean?
It's hard.
I don't know, and I don't know many who aren't like hooking up or like smoking a little weed, drinking a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like I don't know. I know 2, literally 2, and they're both my parents. You know what I mean? like
get them on the show.
You know what I mean? And then the show will be about them, and then those like 40 people who are just like, oh, okay, good. Like, I think you're a garb, you know, like, so like, I just think that as a result, anytime we get this thing, we have to be everything for everybody. You know what I mean? And it's just, so like, we have to be representative of the Davies as well as all the non-Davies, and it becomes impossible. You know what I mean? And you're there, and I'm like, I'm sorry to say, I'm assuming there's a lot of brown folks watching this, and like, y'all the worst with this one. You know what I mean? Like, it's your own community who's gonna come after you first. You know what I mean? They're gonna be like, well, nah, because it's a reflection of all of our imperfections, and I'm happy to put those on camera. I'm happy to do all of these things that we're not gonna tell like aunties and uncles and stuff like that. We're not gonna talk about. And I'm happy to do that on camera because it's fun. It's literally what makes interesting. But everybody likes to wag their finger because there's this weird delusion of playing that model minority, right? Mm-hmm. So I just think that there's like Riz is doing it, Rami is doing it, Mahershala is doing it. You know what I mean? There's all these people. Everybody here is doing it. But the mere fact that like, I think that the responsibility lies on industry to be willing to do that. We as artists can only like. Like I said this today in a post, but like we as artists, we can only truthfully, like at the end of it, represent ourselves. Mm-hmm. This is we bring ourselves to the character, and as a result, like, yeah, I can bring all of this to like how I can react to this, how whatever. And if I gotta put on a little coat of paint of like a Syrian accent, speaking Arabic and everything like that, I'm gonna make sure that I do that as best I can. But this is the real thing that I'm doing about how I react to this. And that's the only thing that needs to be my priority of representation. I don't know what you got to say about that.
No, thank you.
I think what you were saying was very interesting, how, there is an onus on the community too, to be there when we get to do something without being presumably critical of it. First, show up, buy a ticket, watch the show. Yeah, okay. then write your negative post, but watch the thing. I think about how much influence the Jewish culture has on popular culture. The percentage of the Jewish population in North America is less than the percentage of South Asian population. Yet we know so much more about Jewish culture, from the Marx Brothers to Woody Allen to Neil Simon to Louis B. Mayer, to the whole popular culture was so influenced by them because, right or wrong, good or bad, that community supported that industry. So it fed each other, and so their influence on our own sort of global popular culture, far, they're punching way above their fighting weight. And we are fighting each other on some level before we get to do that. And that to me is the next stage, is when we get the community. I used to say, I'm better known outside my community than I am inside my community. More people not of my community watched things that I was in than people in my community knew about stuff that I was in. I think that's changing because the community is now Maitri's generation. It's not my generation, 100%. It's not an immigrant generation anymore. It's not a generation of Bengalis versus Punjabis versus Malayalis versus Tamils. It's not that Maitri's generation is, they all have that, but they're not at odds with each other. There's no tall poppy syndrome going around when they're dealing with each other. And I think there's hope there. But I think that's the next stage.
Absolutely. And what you're saying, you have an amazing fan base, Sujith, and devout fan base. And it is interesting to hear how many are outside the community versus inside the community, and what that means. And yes, how do we critique what needs to be critiqued, but also show up for our own people when we need it? So. Well,
I do a lot of theater, and a lot of the plays that I've done have been South Asian, Indian ink or whatever. And I remember the theater community, or the theaters, would print up posters in Punjabi and post them in Little India to try and get that audience to come to the plays. In 20 years of doing that kind of theater, the audience never showed up. If just the South Asian audience had shown up, they would have had a sold out house every night, but they didn't. However, there's a Tamil language community theater in Scarborough that's got 700 people going to it. Right? So
I don't know what. Yeah, I know. No, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Sujith. Also, with what you're saying about first watch the show, watch the movie. But I'd like to also add on in brackets, till the end. I think that's a
Yeah.
underline and bold
100%.
that part. I think that's a big stress. Like you were saying, Kausar, like, you know, there's all this hype, like the one Brown show that comes out this year, and I'm like here, like, hey, never have I ever, how are you doing? For Never Have I Ever, we had like a lot of hype before when Mindy was just, and the AirPod went out. It's fine. But when Mindy like needed her open casting call, like immediately it already had hype. So then when I got announced for getting the role, hype. And everybody's like here waiting, like, when's it gonna come out? When's it gonna drop? And I'm like, yo, I don't know, you tell me when. And then it drops. And then those 40 people, the wagger that are like, yo, hey, you said this wrong. Why are you thinking about sex? What is this horny teenager on my screen? What is this? This is wrong. I'm like, it is what it is. Like, like, I'm sorry.
It's a story, right?
Honestly, like, I'm not gonna lie, I think, like, a lot of people ask me, like, oh, like, how do you feel now? You're like famous, like people know your face. I'm like, like I still feel like the same loser. Like, I feel like the same me, you know, like I have my awesome family, awesome friends that keep me grounded. So I don't feel like much has changed in my life as a person, as who I am over this year, as everything has happened. But I think the one thing I couldn't prepare myself for was the hate. I never could have prepared myself for that. I prepared myself for all the work with the interviews, talking, and, you know, like this kind of shindig, meeting people, amazing people, you know, doing the actual work, the craft of acting. But I couldn't prepare myself for the hate. And I don't think anybody could, especially when you're like 17 and you're like, hello, internet. Hi. This is my first time acting.
How dare you? Yeah.
Yeah, like, honestly, like, my biggest worry was like, oh my God, what if like people make memes of me of how they made like memes of Kristen Stewart and Twilight for having no face? What if I can't act?
Never.
What if Mindy was on
You can
drugs?
act.
I was
you
like,
can all
yeah,
act.
but, like, my honest thought was like, what if Mindy was like on drugs and I'm like, she didn't mean to pick me? Like, what if like this was a mistake? Like, what if somebody like they meant to take
switched
it back?
Up the photos.
like what if they meant to take it back, but now they can't because they promised some Canadian Mississauga 17-year-old brown girl that she's gonna have a role, and if they say no, it's like stealing candy from a kid. So I don't worry about all these things. But then like the South Asian community hit. No, wait, hang on. Brown Twitter hit. Let's be more specific. Brown Twitter hit, and I'm like, oh, hi, hello, nice to meet you. And yeah. At first, I took it really hard. I was like, damn, like I'm disappointing my own people. And I realized, I caught myself quick. I would put, of course, 10 times more weight into a hate comment after seeing hundreds of positive comments. And then I'd see the one. And I'd be like, fix it. You need to fix it. Oh my God, somebody's upset. But then if it was a South Asian hate comment, I'm like I'm praying now. I'm praying, and I'm like,
stab me, yeah.
It's just like it hurt more when it was a South Asian hate comment. It hurt more, and I'm like, wait, why should it hurt more? Because I realized if it was like Joe Bob saying, "Oh, this kid is cringy," I'm like, yeah, shut up, white man. Like, okay, go off, whatever. Because I could just fall back on that. But when it was my own community, I'm like, ow. So I realized, like, you know, the community, they're either your biggest supporters or they're your biggest detractors. You know, they're always saying like, oh, I could have done it better. The amount of comments I would see of like, oh, I'm so glad I turned this down. And like Mindy would read that and be like, she'd like turn to me and be like, no, she didn't turn it down. I don't know who this is. I'm like, okay.
But she never got a call.
But to me, that didn't matter. It's like, I don't care if she didn't get a call. She turned it down. Like she wished she didn't do this. But then I realized, as I matured in the span of a week, I don't know. As I matured, I realized, you know, I actually, like, I can't even get mad at these people. The people, those 40 people that are, you know, wagging their finger at me. I don't hate them. I don't feel anything ill towards them because I realize they're so starved for representation that they really did put all of their money on this hyped up Netflix show that was going to come out. So they really put all their bets on it. Like it's a horse race, and their horse failed them. That sucks. And while some people felt seen after Never Have I Ever, and they're now happier than they could be, some people didn't get that. And I honestly empathize with that. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Between you and me, I'll keep trying, and I'll, of course, fulfilling my own desires as just being a creative, but I'm going to help get that representation. And I hope you're willing to come along on that journey with me. If not, there's so many other beautiful South Asian actors.
That gets back to what Hamza was saying,
Exactly.
It can't just be one show.
Can't.
Yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. You know what I mean?
Right.
We'll make one. You know what I mean? Stick around. There's more. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Stop trying to cut my wings. I'm trying to take everybody with me. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Groups rise together. Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
Sujith. I'm just saying, if there's 5 shows, we don't sort of call into question 5 shows of 5 white shows, but it's the one brown show's got to carry the weight of representation, taste, diversity, all of the things on its shoulders. That's silly, right? And it's because we're still being deprived.
Yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Thank God for Mindy Kaling, but there should be 8 Mindy Kalings doing, they should, you know what I'm saying? Like it's.
But they're on their way though. They're on their way because of Maitreyi. You know what I mean? They're on their way.
Yeah. And go ahead, Thea.
Oh yeah, it's like, I was just thinking of, it's like Crazy Rich Asians, right? Like it was like polarizing. People hated it or they loved it. And it's like, because they got one movie, the big blockbuster, glossy, full of all the most beautiful actors and actresses. They get one shot, and it's like that's it. Like that's the problem. The onus can't be on each of us to deliver for everyone, because that's impossible. It's that there just needs to be a whole lot more content.
Absolutely.
That there needs to, so that it's all of that pressure doesn't fall on your shoulders to be what everyone expects of that show and of that character and of you as an actor. It doesn't, that's so unfair. It's just that there just needs to be more, so that people can pick and choose. Okay, well, this is my, I like medical dramas, and I like teen, young adult, whatever. Like if there's 5 to 10 South Asian actors that you can think of off the top of your head making television and film right now, that's not enough.
Right.
Because like I said earlier, it's not a shortage of talent. It's a shortage of vehicles for those actors. So I think the solution is more South Asian representation. That's the only thing that's going to solve this problem.
And also that leads me to, and I do also just want to say, Maitreyi, thank you for your honesty and vulnerability in that, because the trolls do hurt, and that's not easy to say. So I think it's important to hear. And Tiya, what you were saying about, that's the vehicle, and it leads me to one of the audience questions actually, which I want to ask Sujith, because you're a writer as well, doing amazing things. And the question is from Deepa, because we are so underrepresented, have you felt the need to create your own projects? As an actor in my 30s, I feel like I have to pivot towards writing. And wanted to ask you what brought you to writing.
I mean, that's really how I started acting. I started as a writer, and the third thing I ever wrote was a TV movie for CBC, which was about an Indian guy who'd grown up in Canada, and we couldn't find an actor. And this is 1982.
Brown people didn't exist back then.
Didn't exist.
They barely
existed.
Invented yet.
They barely existed as writers. I mean, that was it. So at taxpayer expense, they sent the casting director to LA, because we're going to find one in Canada. And she came back and says, "Oh, I found him. I said, "Oh, who? His name is Howie Mandel." And I went, "I don't think that's an Indian name." And she said, no, he's a young comic. He's Canadian, but he's in LA. So before he was famous. So they sent the director and the producer, not the writer, to LA to audition Howie Mandel for this movie. And they hired a makeup person who'd been on a Spielberg movie, and they painted drew a mustache on Howie Mandel and auditioned him. And I'm like freaking out, because this movie was supposed to be about Indian people, And they came back, and to their credit, they said, no, it wasn't quite right. And I thought that was it. The movie's canceled. So I begged them for an audition, having never acted on film before. And I got the part. And that's how I started acting. So I firmly believe that yes, we can't afford not to be hyphenates. You have to be, you know, writing, like, and I've had parallel career, like I've 3-hat careers, because when the acting's down, I got a writing job. When the writing's down, I've had an acting job. Lately, I've been acting more than writing, but yeah, I don't think you have the luxury of a career in the arts, at least in my experience, without diversifying your skill set. And if you, I mean, I'm not saying everybody has to be a genius, but everybody needs to be creating a vehicle and hiring their friends or whatever. Do it on your phone. Like when I was starting out, you could, this thing, you know, is better than the films that the cameras that they used to make my first films on. So, you know, there's no excuse. And that flood of content is what's going to change the world.
Amen. Change the world, change that representation. And I love that you came in through the writing angle and then we're like, hey, time to step up. Love that. And so also I wanted to ask y'all, what do you think, in the light of this being an election year, in the light of Black Lives Matter, and also looking at it from both a Canadian and both an American perspective, what do you think our social responsibility as actors, or even actors a part of a union, is?
Well, first of all, I feel like I'm saying this more as like this is what I would say before Never Have I Ever. Like if you talk to 17-year-old me who's just in high school, my biggest beef, I would say, with actors, celebrities, just in general. Celebrities and actors don't educate themselves enough first. And it's such a pet, like, not, I'm not even gonna say a pet peeve of mine. It's just, it bothers the shit out of me. Like the amount of celebrities that I can tell, they just post something so performative. They didn't even read the post, because you look at the post, you click the post, and it actually has wrong information. It's not credible. Like, educate yourself first before you educate the followers that love you and appreciate you and respect you so much for your craft, because I guarantee you their respect will only grow more if you just educate yourself too, because they will see that. And if it's I think the first thing I learned just going into Hollywood, you know, like with my mom beside me, going on to set and just starting to learn everything about Hollywood, the first thing I learned is that knowledge is power. And just because you're a celebrity, because you're famous, because you think people should give more of a shit about you than somebody else across the street, does not mean you can't educate yourself, you can't learn more, and that you know it all, because you don't. Learn more, because you live in your own little bubble that has its own privileges and its own lovely luxuries. So educate yourself more about what's going on and use your platform, of course, in a way that you're comfortable with. Sure, I won't, you know, tell you how to do it yourself, but I think no matter what, you can educate yourself.
There are resources out there.
Yeah.
Amen. Love that. And also, Hamza, question for you from audience member Siddhi.
Hi.
So which was the first role that you auditioned or got offered that you felt was true to you in context of your South Asian identity?
It was a show called This Life. It was a CBC show called This Life, where the character itself was, they didn't have an ethnicity or anything for it. He was just supposed to be a foreign exchange student. So when or he was doing his post-grad and stuff, and I just auditioned for it in every accent that I could do. I sent them like this 12-minute long self-tape, version 1, version 2, version 3, and I was just like, all right, like what you want me to be, you know what I mean? Like everything, I did all of it. And then, so they liked me enough, and I was fortunate enough that the writers were just like, all right, pick whichever one you want to do, we're good with. So we actually sat down and we built the character ourselves. And I was just like, you know what? I've actually never gotten to play a Pakistani yet. I've never gotten to do that. Like, you need him to be from abroad, but I'm just like, I've literally never gotten to do that. So is it cool if we can make him like from Karachi, and then he got his, like, you know, engineering degree from Lahore, and then he did his executive MBA wherever, and now he's doing his postgrad and stuff like that. So we just built it from the ground up, and that was literally the, you know, got my first CSA nomination for that, you know what I mean? And I mean, I say first only, but you know, but like
first of 100,
you know, but it was the same. It was that process that got me the job I have now, because it was the same showrunner who hired me to be just like, hey man, I'm writing the show about this Muslim refugee. Can you just like have a conversation about me about like what it was like being brown and Muslim coming up? And that was like 3 years, like a year before the show went into any kind of development, just while he was in the writing process. And I think, you know, to what Sujith was saying, because I infused myself into the writing of it, I was involved in the creating of a vehicle, you know, and as such, being attached to that from an early point, I was kind of put at the top of the pile, and then they looked for any possible, oh, the audio has disturbance. I'll stop moving around so much. Is that good? Is that better?
I'll hit your mic, my guy.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, it's just literally, it's my
right. Sounds.
We can hear it all. Don't worry.
Yeah. All right, cool. But yeah, it was that thing where they, you know, and I think it's so funny. So much of what we're talking about is I'll plug. I'll do a plug right now. Actually, I'm doing a TED talk about this. I recorded it on Saturday. And so TED Toronto, like they'll release it on October 29th. So make sure you join the TEDx Toronto, whatever. But a lot of what I was talking about, or what we're talking about now, is completely about how I felt disconnected from my culture and how I did it to myself to try to fit into this industry and this mold. And I didn't really start getting the work that I wanted to get until I recognized how important my culture was to myself. You know, I was really trying to fit into what I thought the industry wanted, and I was getting bad roles, which were bad representation because I wasn't a good representative of it, you know. And then once I started embracing a little bit more, the universe responded with opportunities that would allow me to do that. So like, I really think, like, so to answer your question, it was This Life. Check it out. It's on CBC. You can go online. Season 2. I played Raza, and I'm only interested in playing characters now that are at least truthful to a 70% or more of who I am, because otherwise it's just phoning it in and putting on a mask. And I did that for a good 27 years of my life, both on and off camera. So I'm really not interested in doing that anymore.
Amen. Power to leaning into it, because that's where it's at.
Yeah, that's where your money's at, you know. That's where my money's at anyway.
But it's hard to do that. It takes I think bravery to do that. So shout out to you naming that, because it takes confidence in self. So
thank you.
Yeah. So Tiya, I want to ask you this, because also you were in Miss India America, and that was one of your first breakout roles as well. And what is that? Is that sound about right?
Why you look surprised?
Oh, because I would not. Oh yeah.
Well,
it
that's
was not that long ago, so I hope that wasn't one of my first breakouts.
I'm sorry. Definitely not first breakout. I remember that was when I first saw you, and I was like, that was the first time I met Tiya, and I was like, she is funny.
Thank you.
I like her.
Thanks.
And I loved, I mean, the fact that it was a South Asian movie, and I want to bring in one of the audience questions. This one it's coming in a couple different ways, but I want to lean on Crystal's question, which is, as an Indo-Caribbean artist who still struggles with South Asian acceptance, what advice would y'all give to the diaspora folks who aspire to be artists and actors? And in that same realm, what do you think about within like the South Asian entertainment industry of not feeling Desi enough or not feeling South Asian enough? And what advice would you give?
Oh man, great question. I am totally on board with that, because I mentioned probably before, I'm from Texas, born and raised in Texas, say y'all a lot. You know, I when I first got to Hollywood, I don't know, that's a gross way to say it. When I first got to LA, I, you know, would audition, as I mentioned, like mostly for ethnically ambiguous characters. And those are the roles that I would get and still do. I mean, it's only like sort of, I can count on one hand how many times I've played a character who is specifically and explicitly South Asian. And, you know, this is, I'm saying like 10 years ago, or even more recently, you know, I would go out for these roles that you know, very rarely I would get a role that was an Indian character. And I would audition for it. And invariably the response would be, oh, she was great, but she just didn't feel authentic enough. And it's like, well, I'm from Arlington, Texas. That's where I was born. That's where I was raised. I went to school in Austin and now I live in LA. Like, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm as Indian as I am, whatever that means to whomever, you know what I mean? Like it was really frustrating because, oh my gosh, I remember, I'll just give you a quick anecdote. I'll try and make it quick.
Yes. No,
I auditioned for a movie. It was a Disney movie and it was shooting in India. And so this character who was also a dancer, which I'm a dancer. So I was thrilled. I was so excited. I wanted to get this job because I wanted to go to India to shoot a movie and also to get to combine dance and acting, which I'd never gotten to do before. So I was really excited. And I really worked on my Indian accent. For some Indian actors, it's easier. For some, it's not as easy. And so I really worked on mine. And I remember I was walking into it was like a callback with like producers, director, casting. It was like, you know, 12 people sitting at a table. And I was walking into the room with the casting director and, oh, I shouldn't say who it is. A very important person at Disney at the time was just walking past, and he would no doubt be like a major decision maker and who would get this part. And she said, oh, so-and-so, this is Tia. We're about to go in and read. And he said, oh, you know, speak to me in your accent, which is, first of all, like aggressive. But he was like, speak to me in your accent. And so I started doing my accent, which my accent, my like go-to Indian accent is my cousins from Calcutta. That's who my accent is based on. And he said, oh, that doesn't really sound Indian enough to me. And I just remember like dying inside and also being like, well, that's how they talk. So you know, I don't know what to tell you, dude. Like, that's maybe your idea of what an Indian accent should sound like. You know, there's probably 1 million types of Indian accents throughout the entire Indian subcontinent and diaspora. So anyway, I didn't get that job. But
you're lost, bro.
It is, yeah, well, thanks. It is a struggle. You know, but that's true of like being a bicultural person too, right? Like, are you too, you know, not Indian enough for your Indian side of things? And are you too Indian for your non-Indian side of things? Or I'm saying Indian, but you know, South Asian, whatever you want to, I don't know. It's hard. So all I can say is that just be authentically yourself as best you can. Cause that's all you can do, right? People sort of, biculturality, did I just make up a word? Being a bicultural person is such a, there's like a spectrum, right? And people fall on all different places on that spectrum of how close you feel to your one culture or the other. And all I can say is that, you know, people will have their opinions about where you fall on that spectrum and how that feels for them, but that's not your business. Your business is being true to yourself, and that's the best you can do. And sometimes that will work to your favor, and then in like cases like this particular case, it won't. And what can you do? Like, that's true of acting in general, right? You can just be the best you can be. And if that works for the people that are going to be giving you this job, great. And if it doesn't, you got to like set your sights on the next one.
Yeah. It feels like the struggle is in representing the spectrum. And so what you're saying about is just sticking to the authenticity. That's real, because that is the struggle.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
But I wish you all luck. Whoever was asking that question, I feel you, and I wish you luck. It's not easy, but you just gotta be you to the best of your ability.
Take that away. You gotta be you.
Quotables. Quotables.
And another audience question, Sujith, do you still get token roles, and how do you address them now? And I asked this one because I think it's important to sometimes know the language of how to say no when when you're still trying to work on the resume comes up?
Well, it's difficult. The question is difficult because I'm not exactly sure what the questioner means by token roles. Mm-hmm. If you mean a role that could be played by anybody and they say, submit all ethnicities on the breakdown, and you're in the room when there was auditions, now it's all self-tapes, but you were in the room and it's you and a Black actor and an Asian actor and a woman and somebody in a wheelchair, and you know that, oh, it's not about the acting, it's about which, minority here is going to fulfill some kind of quota. I mean, if I didn't know that going in, and I'm not, you do your audition and walk away. I mean, I'm at the point where that kind of part isn't really offered to me anymore. So I don't know, but I obviously, I try very much to gauge the part in terms of what it is. And, stereotypes are a problem. I think what Tiya was saying was interesting about accents. I would say 50% of my career, I've played a character with an accent. And as you can tell, I don't have an accent. So, it's acting. And I like to think that on a craft level, I find an accent that is specific to the character. So I'm on my third sitcom playing a character, an immigrant character now. And I think that if you look at the accent that I use on Kim's Convenience versus the accent I used on Little Mosque on the Prairie, which was about 8 years ago, it would be different. It's an Indian accent, but that character was working class, and the guy on Kim's Convenience is sort of posh and Anglo-England, Anglo-British, and has aspirations of poshness. So there's specificity to the accent that I try and bring to the party. Now, there's an argument to be made. Well, we should cast a real actor who's got that accent naturally. And I think Aziz Ansari did that when he was casting the part of the actor who would play his father on
Master of None.
Master of None. And then the actor would come in and do a great reading and then reveal that he actually sounded like me. And then Ansari said, get out of here, and he ended up casting his father. So that, that's fine too. The issue to me isn't whether you're playing, the issue is if you are going to do something, do what Tiya says, be authentic. Not so much that you please the producer, but it's the audience that you've got to convince. If the audience thinks that's authentic, then you've succeeded. If the audience, and the audience is really smart, smells falseness, then, and Hamza's doing a fantastic job, I think, on Transplant, because, the audience is not smelling falseness, even though he's acting, and that's fair. But there's a whole argument now that says it's not, and I think we're going to see that played out in various interesting ways over the next little while. Being old school myself, I don't think you need to be Danish to play Hamlet, but that may be a direction that we're moving in. But getting back to this issue of tokenism, I think it's easy to go down the wormhole of what tokenism is. And we can't afford to sort of turn down work. What we need to be doing is making that part better than it was written. You know what I mean? And bringing more to the party so that they go, oh, he was doing something with this nothing part that we got. Right. He's going to be the star of my next show. You know what I mean? Like, I think we don't have the luxury of being, of saying no to that. We have a responsibility to elevating it.
I like that, making the authenticity irresistible. So we have to lean into it.
Mm-hmm. I feel like so long as you can do it justice, like you can put yourself in somebody's mentality, you can do the accent, you can do whatever, but I feel like if you can't do it justice, like if you're Leonardo DiCaprio being cast as Rumi, like understand that you cannot do that role justice. You know what I mean? Like, but if you're Rami Malek being cast as Freddie Mercury, you can do justice to that, even though he's not, you know, Indian Parsi, or you know what I mean? He did justice to that character. And I think as an actor, you need to know that, like, you need to know your own limitations in where it's just like, okay, cool. Like, and ultimately everybody's going to weigh in on what the limitations should be. But I think you need to be honest with yourself. Sorry to jump in there, but that's just all that came to mind when Sujith was saying that I feel like if you know as an actor that you'd be stretching it a little bit too far to where it becomes parody, then probably let this one pass and let a brown dude play Prince of Persia, Jake Gyllenhaal. You know what I mean? Great actor. You know what I mean? Right. But it could have been Hrithik Roshan. You know, it should have been like, you know, not Persian, but well, you know, like.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Tiya was saying, turning down that Muslim Persian role because it didn't feel right in that moment, and there's power in that too, to be like, no, you got to get the right person. Yeah. Dig it.
Yeah, you have a responsibility, right? I mean, obviously we all want to work, and but yeah, there has to be sort of that sense of responsibility if you're
it's sort of
doing a role a disservice.
It's sort of the conversation I think female actresses must have to have with themselves all the time when parts are sexist. You know? And I think that which is a lot.
Your face, yeah. Your face.
Should just turn off my camera for this part of the conversation. Guys can't say shit about this. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, this is me going down my wormhole. But you know, sometimes you got to say no, right? Yeah. And sometimes you say, I'm going to turn what is flat on the page into something better. And sometimes, I'm Jake Gyllenhaal and I shouldn't say yes.
Right.
Like you have, this is something, I don't think it's unique to our community of actors. I think the specifics are, but not the general issue about whether the part is worth committing yourself to it. That's a personal decision.
It's a balance, and hopefully we're at a world where we're getting all the roles we want to get.
Yeah. It's hard though. It really is hard. Like, just echoing off of everything you guys have said, like, it's hard, but how I personally look at it, and I know I say this from like a point of privilege where I booked my first gig, and like I haven't had to have that real struggle of, trying to fly to LA and make it and audition for everything and, all of that. Like, no, I didn't get that story. And I'm very privileged to say I didn't get that story. But I know for me, a lot of my fans will say, oh, hey.
Oh. Yay, cameo.
But yeah, I have like a lot of my fans, they'll comment like stuff about Miss Marvel, which was recently casted by the lovely, Iman Vellani from Canada. Hell yeah.
All the Canadians.
Canadians
right?
taking over.
Canadians, man. Anyways, not the point.
No offense to you.
No, I'm with you.
I love you.
Yeah, I'm American too. I'm
sorry, Kausar. Sorry. Yeah.
But, a lot of fans were like, yeah, like you should do Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. Like, I love Marvel. Like, I have watched every single, movie from Marvel. Comics was my childhood, everything about superheroes. And I would love to one day play a superhero.
Let's put it out. Let's put it out. But I am not going to play Miss Marvel because Kamala Khan, for her character, it is integral that she is Muslim because that relates a lot to who she is when she's not a superhero. She's a Pakistani Muslim girl, and that's the fact. Okay, Stan Lee's dead. He ain't going to change it. And that's how it's going to be. And if you could find
we got to get to the point where Hamza's Batman, I'm Alfred.
There we go.
You're Batgirl.
Boom.
And nobody cares that we're all brown. And nobody cares we're all brown.
Exactly. Like, for me, I'm like, you know what? I don't need Kamala Khan. Just because she's right now the only, brown female, like one of the few brown female superheroes in the Marvel universe, doesn't mean that we can't make room for more. And I know personally, if it was a Tamil character, I would be so brokenhearted if I saw somebody else play it. It would hurt. It would really hurt. So why the hell would I do that to another minority? That's wrong. That is so wrong. And I would not be able to sit in a role where I'm supposed to be a superhero? No, that's not a superhero thing to do. Superhero thing to do is say, no, go, hey, Marvel, hey, Disney, go find your person. Because it's not like we already said, it's not a lack of brown actors. Like, they're out there. We're not like a mythical unicorn. Like, chill.
Do the work.
It's not that deep. Just do the work and find them. And then when those brown actors do come into you know, Hollywood, onto screen, you know, Iman Vellani, when she takes on this role, it's our job as fellow celebrities, as a community, to support her, to support this 17-year-old kid that's gonna, you know, be this crazy superhero. Cause that's so dope. And I'll find my own place in the Marvel universe. Probably as like Deadpool's apprentice. Cause let's be real, that's more my vibe. Right. Okay? Deadpool vibe and Canadian, Ryan Reynolds. Okay, that's more my vibe.
Let's make it happen. Yeah, and you know, audience members, if you want to start, you know, planning a fully South Asian Marvel movie with every single one of the people on the screen, put it out. Let's make that happen. Because that's what we need.
Why can't we be the Fantastic Four right here? Like, I don't understand.
Make it happen.
That movie's failed how many times? All I'm trying
we can make
you
it
know
work.
what I mean? Like, why can't we
make it work?
I love that. And on that note, I know we're hitting time, and I just can't thank you all enough. But the audience members have also been sending so much love in the audience, so I want to read them back to you all as a closing note. I'm going to go through them, and also as I do, because just for sake of time, I just want to ask you all to think of just literally one sentence or phrase that you would like to leave everybody in the audience with, in terms of just like keeping it going and the resilience and the fighting for representation. So I'm going to read these as you think of that quick phrase. So Maitreyi, you're a badass, and I love how comfortable you are just being you. You be you, and I hope you get the best roles.
Thanks.
Hamza, your honesty is motivating and inspiring. I love you even more now. I'm gonna binge watch Transplant today.
Yeah.
Sujith, there is so much wisdom and experience in what you shared. It is truly amazing to get your perspective and how far you've come in your career. We can all learn from it. Tiya, loved your role in The Good Place. Being represented as a model minority and actually seeing a badass role on screen is just amazing. Love your work. And finally, this has truly been one of the best discussions I've seen and had the pleasure to listen to. Thank you all for being so honest and open in representing our voices. So on that note, let's close out. We'll just go down the line. If we want to start with Hamza.
I love you. Thank you.
Love it. Sujith?
I just say, own your culture, own your talent, own your community, own your part, and support each other.
Love it. Maitreyi?
I'll censor myself, but I'm sure everybody will get the point. It's very on brand for me. But go fudge shit up. Wait, I didn't censor shit. You know what I'm saying? Go do it. Because like, who the hell cares? Just go. Be you.
Love it. And Tiya?
I'm just going to use this moment to encourage anyone who is a fellow American to please, please, please register to vote. Make your voice heard on November 3rd. It's never been more important. Please, please, please vote. Please go get your aunties and uncles and parents who might be interested in politics but still don't vote for some reason. Get them to vote. And thank you for doing this and for inviting me and having me on.
Love it. Yes, and vote.
Thank
and
you,
speaking
CoSAFF.
of representation, your census too, because we need more South Asian representation in our censuses. But yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for joining me. I wish we could keep talking. Just so much love for you all. And thank you for joining. The comments were popping. So thank you. Just so much love, and keep on keeping on, y'all. Thank you for this moment of community amongst everything in the world.
I learned so much from all of you. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Maitreyi, you're so inspirational, man. Like I'm learning so much from you, and I'm just like gotta put my like ego aside and just be like, damn, man, like I'm learning so much from you. It's amazing. Like, yo, like legit. Like it's amazing.
Likewise.
Our culture and representation is in good hands if artists like you keep rolling out. You know what I mean? So thanks for doing what you're doing. You know,
Yes.
everybody, but
Likewise,
I gotta give props. You know.
Yeah.
You're here.